Hello, everyone. Greetings from the West Coast. So, Ryan, you've had some really great reporting on Julian Assange. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, so I reported yesterday for The Intercept, along with my colleague Sarah Sirota, that in 2017, 2018, and 2019, the Senate Intelligence Committee approved of a legal maneuver that designated Wikileaks as a, quote, non-state hostile intelligence service. This follows the bombshell report from Yahoo News that senior Trump officials and the CIA plotted to kidnap and even assassinate journalist and Wikileaks founder Julian Assange. What the Yahoo News report didn't include is that they actually went to Congress, went to the Senate Intelligence Committee and asked for this sense of the Congress that would endorse this legal change that they felt like they needed in order to move forward with these plans. Kim, there hasn't been much pickup of this explosive report from Yahoo News. Do you think that this will influence the ability of the U.S. to extradite Assange now that there's evidence that they plotted to kidnap him?
Well, you would hope so, right? You would hope that the Brits wouldn't actually export somebody who or deport somebody who had actually whose life may be under threat. What's really interesting about this, though, is you're right. This vote itself hasn't been actually discussed much, and of course, I think that's because it was so bipartisan. Wasn't it 14-1? And the one was Ron Wyden, who said no, he didn't want to include this language. And that's a bipartisan committee. And included in that vote was, by the way, Kamala Harris. Right. So this is a very bipartisan issue against Julian Assange. And I think that's why we're not seeing it in the news. That's why there's not much discussion about this.
Yeah. And Emily, Ron Wyden was on the right side of this. Yep. So he was the one of the 14-1. But there's something that is just empty about Wyden's approach to these issues, and that's revealed here. So Wyden, if you remember, also sent up a bunch of smoke signals before Edward Snowden's leaks about the NSA's mass surveillance. He was putting out all of these cryptic statements that because he had learned that about what the NSA was doing, but he was bound by these classification rules, so he couldn't say anything publicly about it. So he'd put out all these cryptic warnings to the public. And after Snowden's revelations, people went back and were like, this is what Ron Wyden was trying to tell us. Well, now he's done it again, because at the time he put out a statement in 2017 saying, gee, I don't actually agree with this sense of the Congress, because what if they used it to go after journalists that they were trying to designate? Just what if, maybe that's something people should be concerned about. Hypothetically, I'm not violating any classification laws here by wondering out loud what abuses might occur as a result of this. He just puts that up as a statement on his website. But he knew, it appears, he won't say, but it appears that he was briefed already on the real purpose of this. So what's the point of these smoke signals if he's just going to let the fire rage?
I mean, I'd rather he give the smoke signals than, if he really thinks his hands are tied, then do nothing. I like the way that you phrased it with Sarah in your piece, that this suggests that Wyden knew what was happening if even he didn't say it aloud. We actually reported that Mike Pompeo, in a recent speech at the Federalist, we reported, he said, don't believe everything you read in Yahoo News, which is sort of a predictable response from Pompeo, but it's very interesting to look at how, when the Obama White House was approached with this, exactly what you're reporting on, this idea that you broaden the category to lump WikiLeaks into it, they couldn't really get around the New York Times problem, as you've noted before. Trump White House, after the Vault 7 leak, Mike Pompeo is furious. He doesn't want to tell Donald Trump, according to the Yahoo story, about the hacking, goes then and brings this up. And it's kind of greeted as Kim mentioned, on a bipartisan basis as, okay, it's not, let's do it.
Right, and Kim, I thought it was interesting that the thing that finally triggered the CIA to go overboard and just completely lose its mind was being humiliated.
Yes, right.
Like they were making fun of the State Department and the Defense Department for losing its cables and its evidence of war crimes, and then like, ha ha ha, we're good at concealing our evidence of war crimes. And then WikiLeaks said, oh yeah, no, well, we have yours too.
Yeah. And that's why there's so much bipartisan hatred towards Julian Assange, because he's exposed both sides. You know, the Republicans liked him when he was exposing Hillary Clinton, but then, oh no, when it was under the Trump administration, the CIA, suddenly he's an enemy. And this also, you know, look, this is the ultimate form of censorship, right? I mean, the government and the powers that be will continually try to deplatform and censor people that they think are misinformation or disinformation or people that they just don't want you to hear from. And obviously taking someone out, right? The threat of kidnapping or even murdering, even though they're saying that was sort of somewhat lightly suggested, that is the ultimate form of censorship. And what's interesting about this is this also kind of calls into question, if you remember in 2010, the accusations that Hillary Clinton said, hey, why don't we just drone the guy? And this was considered, it wasn't substantiated, that it was, Hillary Clinton said, well, if I said that, I was joking. And this kind of calls all of that into question. I mean, when you humiliate someone or when you go after their side and they don't like what's being exposed, it seems like the presidents themselves, like when you look at Obama and Trump, maybe themselves didn't seem to have very strong feelings either way about Julian Assange, but the others around them in their administration certainly did. And yeah, this kind of calls into question, was there even talks about this sort of thing, especially since this vote was so bipartisan? And it has been so bipartisan against Julian Assange, does kind of call into question what methods have they been looking at for over a decade now.
I was just going to say, I fully, it should be said that if you're the head of the CIA and Vault 7 happens, it's understandable, like the threat that Julian Assange poses, it's fully understandable why you would say suddenly we must crack down because this is getting very serious. We're getting humiliated and our operations are being compromised. So it's an understandable reflex, but it's obviously not an appropriate one.
Right, and maybe don't build these multi-billion-dollar programs and then lose control of them. But to Kim's point, so in December 2017, WikiLeaks posted infrared video that they obtained from outside of the embassy of what they called a grab team. And in hindsight now, it certainly looks like that's a plausible claim. We can play a little clip of that here. And so, Kim, given that this footage and here's just a couple of guys in the middle of the night reading through documents sitting outside the embassy, as one does in London, it does appear that these plans were pretty far advanced.
Yeah, I mean, and this is so absolutely threatening. And I think everybody needs to understand just how bad all of this really is. I mean, this is the military-industrial complex and the intelligence agencies. And when you turn against them, your life is at risk. Whether you get taken out through an assassination attempt or even just imprisoned for the rest of your life, this just goes to show how those people who try to speak up against all of this, it really is truly threatening. And, we have to understand that our military and our intelligence agencies, from my viewpoint have, and I think we've got a mountain of evidence to show that they've gone rogue in a lot of situations. They're not really representing the American public anymore and our interests. We have endless wars, we have regime change, we have coups and meddling in other countries' elections. We're doing all of these variety of things all around the world that really are not under the name of what, it is in the name of the American people, but not what we actually support. And then when we call that into question and we say, hey, we don't know if you're really if you're operating as good guys anymore, then they say, well, we'll show you how good we really are here in just a second. We're going to potentially kidnap you or incarcerate you indefinitely.
Yeah, the people involved in this should be investigated, held accountable, and they've got to drop the extradition attempt. You cannot continue. It's just a gift to autocrats around the world to continue this extradition attempt in the wake of this. I
mean, it won't be dropped. The only thing that I'll say to wrap up this whole conversation, sort of bring it 30,000 feet, is the reason this is a threat is because WikiLeaks is not a one-off. This is not a unique operation. In the democratized media and the internet age, this is how journalists are operating increasingly. And so when you broaden these definitions to target journalists in the form of government surveillance and government action, as Yahoo reported, you're getting into a dangerous situation for the future.
Yeah, they want to make it unique.
Right.
Tomorrow on Rising, Will Jawando and Pedro Gonzalez join for Team Rising.
Plus, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis will be here to discuss U.S. military strategy in China. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We will see you tomorrow. Have a great Wednesday.
See you then.